Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Bouhairie and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC Podcast. I'm Kenneth Bouhairie.
And I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thank you all for joining us. We are still buzzing from Saturday's monster card. We've got Keith Thurman joining us in a little bit to talk about it. And in this week's toe-to-toe segment, we'll list the top 5 wins in the career of Errol Spence Jr. thus far. So with that in mind, let's get right into the week in review. Last Saturday, PBC on Showtime pay-per-view and Showtime Championship Boxing delivered in every way imaginable. Aside from the main event, we saw undefeated prospects taking the next step, contenders eager for a world title shot, proving that they're ready for a world title shot. But let's start with the main event. Errol Spence Jr., the undefeated WBC and WBA World Welterweight Champion, the WBC and IBF World Welterweight Champion, added the WBA strap to his collection, stopping Yordenis Ugas in 10 rounds. Save for a few moments, Spence controlled the action, swelled up Ugas's right eye until it was shut, and the doctor had no choice but to stop the fight. Mike, on a scale of 1 to 10, how impressive was this victory?
I'd give Spence a 9, but only because I don't give anybody a 10. You have to leave some room for improvement. I thought he looked spectacular. Spence isn't the kind of guy who's going to dazzle you with beautiful boxing or one-punch knockouts, that kind of thing. He just coldly, methodically breaks you down and beats you up. And it doesn't matter how good his opponent is. That's what we saw on Saturday. He reduced an accomplished champion into his personal punching bag by the end of the fight. You can't do much better than that.
Yeah, you really can. I'd say a 9 as well. Maybe a 10 if you add the impact that the fight had, on the boxing community and the mainstream. I mean, I saw it being discussed in the mainstream media the following Sunday and Monday. So really glad for Saturday night's events. Did Errol look like the Errol of old to you?
Well, I thought he looked pretty good against Danny Garcia in his first fight after the accident. I did think he looked even better in this fight. I saw no ill effects whatsoever from injuries or the layoff. Remember, he also had a long layoff. He looked ridiculously fit to me, which I attribute to steps that he's taken to improve his conditioning, including hiring a personal chef, I guess you would say, a nutritionist. His timing, his rhythm were just spot on, and he appeared to be as sure of himself as ever. He looked as if the layoffs never even happened.
Yeah, it's interesting. He did mention the nutritionist as being a big help. I felt he looked like the Errol of old physically. Now, maybe not in terms of how much he weighed, but I thought he looked a little light against Garcia. Not as physically imposing as we're used to seeing, but we saw that in this fight against an Ugas who isn't a small welterweight by any means. What were your thoughts on what happened in round 6 when Spence lost his mouthpiece?
It was what Spence said it was, a rookie mistake. He said he thought the referee yelled stop when his mouthpiece came out, so he let his guard down at that moment. Well, the ref didn't do that, didn't say that. And Ugas took advantage by landing a few punches, including a big right that sent Spence into the ropes, which could have been a knockdown. I don't think he was hurt or anything, but that could have been ruled a knockdown. In the end, it didn't really mean anything. He avoided disaster, I guess, but it really didn't mean anything. He bounced back after that and took control, and that was sort of Ugas's last hurrah, I think, actually.
Yeah, I mean, even if it was ruled a knockdown, I don't know if it would have mattered much, the way things sort of proceeded after that. It did look like he got hurt, especially when Ugas got some free shots in, but I can't tell because he just recovered or took back control so fast. He said he needs a new mouthpiece. He's been wearing the same one for years now. I say it's time, get used to the new one as soon as possible. Now, in assessing his own performance, Spence says he did okay and that he can do much better. Would you agree with him?
I think that comment speaks more to Spence's high standards than reality. The fact he always wants to get better is a key reason he's evolving into a truly great fighter. He's never satisfied with what he's done. I think all great anything sort of operate that way. Was it a perfect performance? I suppose it wasn't, but I certainly didn't see any glaring flaws worth talking about. But I guess anybody could always get better, and I love the attitude.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would agree with Errol simply because, hey, if he says so, then, who am I to say different? Derek James, his trainer, also said the same thing. There were times where he kind of reached for his shots. There were times maybe he wasn't defensively responsible, but I'm nitpicking. I mean, it was a fantastic performance. What adjustments, if any, could Ugas have made?
I remember thinking by around the fourth round that Spence was clearly outworking Ugas, which is another thing he just does. He just outworks his opponents. I thought Ugas needed to get a little busier, a little bolder, if you will, to keep pace with Spence, to have a chance to win. At the same time, though, he got beat up as it was. And had he been any bolder, he might have gotten knocked out sooner. So maybe there really was nothing Ugas could do to win the fight, short of, I mean, I just can't think of anything. I was going to say maybe moving around, trying to stick and move, but that's not really who he is. Right. And Spence would find an answer for that anyway, I think. So I just think Spence is a level above him.
Yeah, it sure seemed that way on Saturday night. And obviously, two great trainers in each fighter's corner, Ismael Salas and Ugas's corner, Derek James and Spence's corner. In a battle of two great trainers, what did you think of each one's game plan?
Well, Spence's game plan was obviously spot on.
And
he executed it perfectly. I don't want to be too hard on Salas. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly what their game plan was based on what I saw. I thought he looked pretty good in the first couple rounds. He was busy enough to be competitive, and he was landing some good body shots. And then it just all kind of went wonky. And so I don't know. I'm not going to blame that on Salas. I'm not even going to blame it on Ugas. I just think Spence is better.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it looked like they had a pretty solid game plan to start things off, but once Spence sort of kicked it up a notch, they couldn't keep up. What did you think of the stoppage?
I think it was a good stoppage. I think once upon a time that fight would have been allowed to go on because Ugas was still fighting back hard. But these days, you can't expect a fight to fight a guy like Spence with one eye, particularly when you've been taking a beating like that. It's dangerous enough to fight Spence with two eyes. So yeah, I think the doctor made the right decision. It wasn't his decision. He suggested it to the ref, and the ref stopped the fight. So yeah, good stoppage.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought they could have even stopped it earlier. He was taking quite the beating, and you're right. I mean, there's no reason for him to continue, especially with Spence smelling blood. I don't know if he would have made it for those last two rounds. What did the victory do in terms of Errol's legacy?
I think Spence might be evolving into a great fighter, which I don't say lightly. He had the victories over Kell Brook, Lamont Peterson, Mikey Garcia, Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, and others. Yeah, he's been a title holder for 5 years now, which is a long time these days. That was already starting to sound like Hall of Fame credentials to me. And then he beats a guy who beat Pacquiao to unify 3 of the 4 titles. This is special stuff that he's doing. And of course, if he fights and beats Terrence Crawford to become undisputed champion, well, now we might be seriously talking about greatness.
Yeah, I mean, he's having an all-time great run at 147. Of course, there's that last belt that's still out there with Terrence Crawford, which will probably tell the tale of his legacy in this weight class, at least for now. And if he's able to do that, man, this may be the best welterweight run we've seen since Leonard. That's how good it's been. What are your early thoughts on Spence versus Crawford?
Well, if somebody asked me if you could make any fight in boxing, what fight would it be? It would be Spence and Crawford. Just two supremely talented, unbeaten, top 5 pound for pound guys who happen to fight in the same division and be around the same age. We'll have time to break it down and make a prediction about how we think the fight might go, that kind of thing. For now, I'm going to join the legions of devoted fans who dream of fights like this, and hoping that it actually happens.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's just such a spectacular fight. 2 undefeated world champions, 2 guys who are the top 5 pound for pound going in their primes, going against each other. It really gets no better. I do hope it happens. Now, in the co-feature, Isaac Cruz, the lightweight we saw give Gervonta Tank Davis some problems last December. He looked sensational. He dropped Yordenis Ugas 3 times, put him away in the 5th round. Mike, give us your thoughts on Cruz's performance.
I thought it was a good performance. Once again, he fought like a wild man, but I think he knew he could get away with that against this version of Gamboa. He proved that he could compete at the highest level when he lost a competitive decision to Tank Davis, in his previous fight. And he's proved, he could overwhelm lower level opposition in entertaining fashion too, by the way, as he did against Gamboa. He also won up Davis, I guess. It took him 12 rounds to stop Gamboa and Devin Haney, who outpointed him in his last fight. So it was a good night for Cruz.
Yeah, it certainly was. What about for Gamboa? Where does he go from here?
Well, I have to give the guy credit. He tried in that fight. There were times when he actually stood toe to toe with Cruz and landed some good shots. Overall, though, it was kind of hard to watch given his pedigree, what he used to be. I think at 40 and after 3 consecutive losses, it's probably time for Gamboa to move on. He had a special career, Olympic champion, professional title holder, fought for a long, long time at a high level. He can really look back on his career with pride, but I just personally wouldn't like to see him fight again.
Yeah, I think given his last few fights and the losses and the nature of this one, that retirement certainly needs to be on the table. What about for Cruz? Who would you like to see him face next?
Well, again, he gave a good account of himself against Davis. He's ranked by all 4 major sanctioning bodies. So he's right there. He's a legitimate opponent for anybody. I mean, there's no name that we leave out here. The problem is that he might have to win another fight or two to force his way into a title fight.
Sure.
For now, maybe he faces a Javier Fortuna or somebody like that. And he's ranked, and Cruz is ranked number 4 by both the WBC and WBO. Maybe he targets one. Maybe he targets one of the guys above him in those sanctioning bodies. 2 names: Abdualiev and Baranchik, Dennis Baranchik, Angel Fierro. Those are 3 names, guys that I'm really not that familiar with, but they're ranked higher than Cruz is. Maybe he fights one of those guys. The idea is to continue to move up if he can, and eventually, if he keeps doing this, he's going to get his title shot.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Speaking of really good lightweights, also on the undercard, unbeaten lightweight prospect Jose Valenzuela had the fastest win on the night, stopping Francisco Vargas in 1 round. Mike, what can we take away from this victory?
I guess we already knew this, but the kid can whack. That was a big shot against an experienced, pretty tough guy who had just gone the distance with Isaac Cruz. You build a reputation as a special fighter with knockouts like that. And even though it was a small sample, very small sample, I think it showed that he has the goods. That wasn't a lucky punch after all, so he had reason to be happy afterward.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, I mean, to have that kind of performance at a showcase, very, very impressive. He's gone past 4 rounds only once in his career, though. Is he better off getting in the work than continuing to take out guys early?
Right. This is an interesting conversation. Listen, if a punch like that lands, it lands. You don't necessarily want to hold back just to get in rounds. That said, yes, one could argue that he would be better off in the long term if he got in some rounds. I keep thinking of Edgar Berlanga, who created a sensation by getting all those first-round knockouts. The problem is that he didn't gain a lot of experience in the process, so he's still, to this day, sort of raw. You need more rounds to grow. So in that sense, it'd be better to get rounds. Anyway, you have to take knockouts as they come, but you almost hope that some opponents will make you work harder.
What do you think should be next for Valenzuela?
Well, you have to remember he's only had 12 fights. He's only 22. There's no rush. I would target another guy like Vargas, a solid guy with a recognizable name. I wouldn't target a ranked opponent, at least not yet.
Yep.
Is Diego Magdaleno retired? I thought of him. I'd like to see Valenzuela take a few more fights, get in some rounds, and then start thinking about challenging the top guys. Maybe that happens like late next year or around then, maybe early the following year, something like that. He's got time.
Yeah, exactly. I think for now he just needs to stay busy and get as many rounds as he possibly can and continue to work on his craft in the gym, and we'll see where that takes him. Let's move on to the pay-per-view opener. Cody Crowley versus Josesito Lopez in welterweight action. The undefeated Crowley remained undefeated, won a clear unanimous decision win, also scored a knockdown in the 7th round. How did Crowley look to you?
Good performance. Once again, the guy's like a machine. I don't see him as a super quick, dynamic athlete, if you will. He's more of a blue collar kind of fighter. He has elite level skills that he works really hard to hone. He's got a ton of passion, and I think his fitness is just absolutely off the charts. I think the guy could fight 20 rounds if he wanted to. That combination of his strengths allowed him to break down a veteran guy pretty handily on Saturday, which is becoming the norm for him. I just thought he was really impressive.
Yeah, he was. Where does he rank among the welterweights with that skill set.
I think the results are starting to speak for themselves. First he upset Abdukakarov, which was a breakthrough victory for him. And then he built on that success by dominating a veteran like Lopez. He's ranked by 3 of the 4 sanctioning bodies, number 6 by the WBO. And he could creep higher after Saturday. I think he's a legitimate title contender. If he keeps winning, his time's going to come too.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's 1 or 2 fights away from a world title. Who should be next for Lopez based on this performance, or what should be next for Lopez?
Right. It looked to me like he got old in the middle of the fight, like he just couldn't bring it anymore. That guy is an absolute warrior. He's got a ton of pride. I won't be surprised if he tries again. Excuse me. That said, I think it might be time for him too to think about retirement. He's been fighting professionally for 20 years. He's had a good career. He had a victory over Victor Ortiz. He fought on relatively even terms with a lot of top guys. He was a fan favorite. Really good career. But I think enough might be enough, especially based on what I saw in the second part of that fight.
Yeah, it certainly didn't look good. His legs didn't look good, so I think he's got a lot to think about following this fight. What about Crowley? What should be next for him?
Do you know what popped into my head? Ugas. Is it too soon for that? I don't know. I doubt Crowley will get a title shot in his next several fights because there's a long line to wait in. If he and his handlers think he's ready for someone like Ugas, that could be a step for him. I also thought of guys like Jamal James, Sergey Lipinets, Butayev, who we're going to talk about in a minute, Thomas Delorme. I think a guy at that level makes sense for Crowley's next fight. I think he's ready for that kind of challenge. Then, if he's successful, he can target the next level guys, and the next level guys are really good. So we'll see how this plays out.
No, possible opponents for him. We're going to discuss now the Showtime Championship Boxing card prior to the pay-per-view. The main event, a Montes Stanionis captured the WBA quote-unquote regular title with a 12-round split decision win over Radzav Butayev. Mike, this was quite the battle.
I'm still shaking my head over that fight. That was one of the most brutal fights I've seen in a while, which is interesting because neither guy was like really hurt in the normal sense of the word in the fight. They just threw heavy punches from beginning to end, and they were really accurate, especially Stanionis was super accurate. I have no idea what those two guys are made of to survive that kind of punishment for 12 rounds. They have to be 2 of the fittest fighters with the best chins in the sport. One more thing, you wonder how much a fight like that might take out of these guys, long term, but it was really brutal. And also Stanionis was impressive though.
What exactly impressed you about Stanionis?
His ability to execute a good game plan. He fought behind his jab the entire fight. He threw a high volume of really hard, accurate power shots. And he was also responsible defensively, believe it or not. You notice how his hands were always up. Butayev threw more punches than Stanionis, according to CompuBox, but Butayev landed only 19% of his shots. Part of that is he never landed his jab, but still 19% of his shots compared to 37% for Stanionis. That's a big disparity there. He couldn't hurt Butayev, but I'm not sure anybody could hurt Butayev. I thought it was the best performance of Stanionis' career when you factor in Butayev's ability and the magnitude of the fight.
Yeah, I thought he also showed his versatility. We've seen him come forward and fight aggressively, but he also had to box a little bit in this bout and sometimes back up and make Butayev miss and counter and so forth. So I thought he was very impressive. Now, did you see any weak areas from Stanionis that other welterweights might take advantage of?
Not really. I think what prospective opponents might have gleaned, what opponents might have gleaned from that performance is that it makes no sense to stand and trade with Stanionis. Butayev was a good boxer, probably should have boxed more than he did because the toe-to-toe exchanges, are going to always favor Stanionis. I think it's going to take a slick boxer to give Stanionis problems. Thomas Delorme moved a lot in their fight and frustrated Stanionis to some degree. He gave him a really hard fight, but in a different way. But Stanionis still won the fight handily. I was thinking about what Keith Thurman said during his interview here. He said that maybe Stanionis doesn't have the power. I'm going to have to just think more on that. I think a lot of that had to do with Butayev's ability to absorb a punch, because the punches that Stanionis landed were really, really hard. But yeah, maybe he knows more than I'll ever know. So maybe he's right. Maybe that's something that could come back to bite him at some point. But I really think Stanionis is evolving into a scary contender.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's a very, very good fighter, a legit world title contender. He does have, a version of a world title right now. He did seem to bust up easy face-wise, which kind of concerned me, thinking he didn't, Bouhairie didn't land a lot of punches, but whatever. He stood in there and he was game and he was tough for the full 12 rounds. How big was this victory for Stanionis?
Big. I think his ability to beat a guy like Bouhairie as handily as he did, and I thought the scoring should have been unanimous. It was a competitive fight for sure, but I thought for me it was a clear victory for Stanionis. I think that takes him to the next level, and I'm not talking about the secondary WA title that he won, which personally doesn't mean too much to me. I focus more on the top title in each sanctioning body. I'm talking about the way he's perceived. I think you have to put him in the class with a select group of guys now, guys like Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman and Ugas. Maybe he's creeping up on those guys, which is really saying something. He'll probably end up tangling with the other young guys like Jaron Ennis and Virgil Ortiz, which is a fascinating concept. I think you have to lump all these guys in together. I think Stanionis is there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that he's one of those contenders, right? One of those top contenders right now. What about Bouhairie? What's your take on him?
The guy is inhuman in terms of his ability to absorb punishment. How do you take that many shots and keep coming? As I said earlier, though, he probably should have relied more on his boxing ability. That will probably be the lesson he learned in that fight. Yeah. Bottom line for me is this guy is really good. A really good, dangerous fighter who will be better after this setback. I'm not sure I'd want my guy, if I was managing a guy, no matter who he is, to face a monster like that. And he's still young enough. He's still fresh enough, I think, to make noise going forward.
Yeah. It's going to be a tough out for anybody. Now, Stanionis is obviously next in line for Errol Spence. If that doesn't happen, who should he face?
I thought of a rematch with Bouhairie, but that's probably not a good idea for either guy. We're going to keep, coming up with the same names. Maybe Jamal James or Sergey Lipinets, both of whom I think have more to give in their careers. And I think Stanionis is ready for guys like Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman, Mikey Garcia, although I'm not sure they'll be in a hurry to give him a shot. But sometimes you just have to go for it and see what happens. I'm pretty conservative, as you know. I mean, I always want to take it as slowly as practical, but I think he's ready.
He's ready. Yeah, he's absolutely ready based on this performance. In the Showtime opener, unbeaten rising star Brandon Lee won a 10-round unanimous decision over Zachary Ochoa. Mike, Lee was unable to take out an opponent for a change. Is that good, bad, or a combination of both?
As I said when we were talking about Jose Valenzuela, it's good for marketing purposes to whack people out, but it's not necessarily good for a fighter's development. I think this was the kind of fight Lee could benefit from. Did he look great?
Yes.
No, he could have cut off the ring better than he did, for example. And he seemed to actually cruise at times. That might have been a product of frustration. I don't know. A lot of that had to do with Ochoa, by the way. He put as much effort into surviving as he did on winning. Although he did step it up in the final couple of rounds. Yeah, and he was competitive in the final couple of rounds. It's hard to take out a capable guy who moves like he did. So in summary, I think Lee will be a better fighter. I think it was a better performance than maybe some people might think, and I think he will definitely be a better fighter going forward as a result of it.
Yeah, exactly. A lot to learn from. Where does he go from here?
Okay, so he's also only 22. Again, no rush. I would stay with opponents like Ochoa for now, capable guys who are not quite contenders. I thought of Ryan Carl, although that might be a step up. He's probably ready for that, though. I think he's really good. I think he's well, we know he's got the power, but I think he's a good boxer and a really good athlete too. I think he just needs a little bit of time. I think this guy's going to accomplish some things.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot to work with there. The tools are definitely there. Just needs more experience, get him in with more boxers, some limited heavy hitters and so forth, and see where his ceiling is. I think the sky is the limit. One note, in the Prediction League standings, Mike and I are both 16-5-1, had a great week. And it's time to bring in our guest this week, the former unified welterweight king and one of the best boxing minds in the game, no question. One time, Keith Thurman. Keith, first question, how is family life treating you?
No, it's just a new experience with the daughter and everything, man. Fatherhood, seeing that growth that they talk about. They say it goes by fast, but it's hard to really put fast into words, man. The growth is just amazing. It's a beautiful process of life. We've all been there. So, but we don't get to remember it. So we get to witness it through our children. So it's just beautiful, man. And we're just trying to move forward and do great in all aspects of life. Sometimes you fall down and you get back up. Keep pushing forward. You strive, and I'm just learning a lot through the process, seeing all of that reassured, and it's beautiful, man.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. We missed you on Saturday night. We were looking forward to seeing you at the fight, and then we heard that you had some flight issues or something.
Yeah, American Airlines was having some flight issues. They were saying that they kept pushing it back. I was at the airport 10 a.m. and they said we might be up in the air 8 p.m. So I just went back home to the fam, turned on the pay-per-view, and tuned in.
Nice.
I wish I was there for the press, for the fans, and for the live experience. But at the end of the day, as a fighter, I definitely saw what I needed to see on TV.
Yeah, we saw you on IG Live breaking it down, but tell us, what were your thoughts on Errol Spence's victory over Yordenis Ugas?
I thought that Spence looked like, Errol Spence for the most part. He was always a good pressure fighter, fundamentally breaks fighters down behind that jab of his. Ugas just allowed him to do too much of his game plan. He was evasive a little bit early on, but without a high output, Spence just came marching in, and I think that he's a really excellent tempo-based fighter from what I've seen in the past and what we saw Saturday night. And he just showcased his skills and his talent once again and pretty much pitched a shutout.
So it sounds like you didn't see any signs of a layoff or any other issues like that.
It could have just been a little bit of the screen, but it was hard for me to see the speed. I thought they both were just a little slow. I thought Ugas was slower. But besides that, he has full confidence. He knows what he can do. He trains a very specific way to execute that tempo and that style of his. So when you let him get off, he's not going to hesitate, and he's proven that in the past. That's where his man down philosophy comes from, because he's going to keep marching in on you and marching in and marching in. So, they chip away. I forget which round it was. But as coach said, you're going to have to put in work to get this done tonight. You're going to have to just stay on them. So Spence listened, and they got the victory they were looking for. So it's definitely good teamwork. We've seen that between him and his trainer in the past, that they seem to be together and work together very well. So, everybody, I don't think there's a lot of questions on where is Spence at now. He showed that, he's a world-class fighter and one of the best welterweights in the welterweight division today.
The sixth round was kind of weird when his mouthpiece came out. What did you make of that sequence?
Yeah, a lot of people talk about it. They try to mention a few comments in the gym today. Somebody brought it up, so that it's funny that ended up being a highlight, right? But I don't know where Spence is head at. We're professional fighters. We know the rules. Protect yourself at all times. And when the mouthpiece falls out, you continue to fight until the referee interjects. So we all know the principles. But for whatever reason, he felt like it was his job to pick up his mouthpiece and know where it's at. And that look away cost him. A lot of spectators, the moment a fighter looks away, even the spectators know, like, oh, hit him, So
right.
He got his check. He got his punishment for not paying attention and not protecting yourself at all times. Ugas came in with the 1-2, boom, boom, knocked him back into the ropes. Now, technically, I like to say that you could almost argue that's a knockdown. Right. You got to really look at it. But, when the ropes hold you up, it's a funny one. But it kind of seems like, he might have been able to stay up, but he definitely was falling backwards and was knocked backwards. I don't think he was tremendously hurt. I think it woke him up. And I think Ugas was a gentleman by taking the kind of penalty shot, but not really engaging 100%, kind of more like, hey, wake up, we're in a fight, what do you think you're doing, we're here, let's continue this fight. And then it did its thing until the lull happened and the referee jumped in and put the mouthpiece back in. So I think it was handled pretty well with the referee and everything. Certain situations can happen, but at the end of the day, it woke up the dog in Errol Spence, because we've seen it in the past, and I think that shot is literally the turning point that woke up the dog. He was already doing pretty good, and he was not only was he going to get back to doing pretty good, but now I'm going to put a little bit more on your behind, and that's what Spence started to do. And then that, I believe, was like the following round or so. That's when he busted the eye. So go ahead and hit Spence, but no, he's got that fight back, that bite back. He wants to do damage right back at you. That's the competitor in him, and anybody who steps in the ring with him just has to be prepared for that and continue to fight.
You said something interesting earlier. You said as a fighter, you saw what you needed to see. Are you talking about you saw some weak points, or how you would attack Errol, or what exactly?
So the best thing to look for, in my opinion, they say look for opponents' weaknesses, but there's different types of weaknesses. Errol didn't look very weak, right? How do you look for weaknesses when someone's dominating, right? You got to look for weaknesses in their strength. What do they do very well, and how can what they love to do be exploited? How can you exploit what he really wants to do to you? How can you take advantage of that? So, what I saw was just such a game fighter. I've never been in the ring with Errol Spence. I've seen things. I've seen him. I don't know what he was doing in the streets. They was like playing around. Don't know if you know this story. They was playing around. He was throwing body shots. Yeah. It was like body shots only or something, with this big dude, bigger than him, whatever, but just thinks that, welterweight champions aren't that bad. So Spence wanted to show him, like, yeah, we are. And I am, that's the thing about Spence. I really see that competitor, that's where the truth is. The truth is he's coming to fight. The truth is he really does want to win, Is he unstoppable? Is he that only time will tell. But he's very fundamentally sound. He's an Olympian. Anybody like me, my caliber, and of Spence's caliber, fighters that went through the amateur ranks in preparation for Olympic Games, we respect Olympians. Just making it to that point, we respect you. I think that's where a lot of his talent comes from, was pushing and striving so hard at a young age. He knows what it takes to compete. He didn't come home with a gold medal like Oscar De La Hoya or Muhammad Ali, but he now has 3 world titles that he's carrying. So obviously, he pursues that same thing to just be the best in any arena that he steps in. And then, and I love that as a competitor myself. I live the same life.
Now, Errol says he wants Terrence Crawford next. We saw Terrence stop Sean Porter last November. Before we get into Spence Crawford, what were your thoughts on Crawford's performance versus Porter?
I thought he was very tactical. I remember giving him the nickname that night, Crafty Crawford. He showed some of his craftiness, and I thought he was very conservative, and he just closed out the show. He exploited what Sean does best. Sean comes in. He kept ducking and making a miss all night. Kept coming in, ducking and making a miss all night. But he didn't make a miss all night because he got caught later in I believe it was the 10th. So Crawford seen the pattern and was able to actually time him and catch him in a bad position while he was down with one of the uppercuts, right uppercut, left uppercut. I think he fought southpaw that fight, so it was probably the left uppercut, and it just was the perfect punch at the right moment. And from then on, he just closed the show, stayed on top of him, clipped him again on the temple, and we all know what happened from there.
How do you see?
But there was a moment, I think, before he stopped him, his own corner was saying, this is a very close fight. You might be losing this fight. And he's like, how am I losing this fight? So I do believe that he let Sean fight a pretty good game up until that point. I know the official judges still had Crawford slightly ahead, but he did let Sean open up pretty well, but Crawford closed out better. So, I thought Crawford's hand speed looked good. I thought his power looked good. And like I said, he's crafty. So, crafty Crawford, one of the best welterweights in the world today.
In your opinion, who wins a Spence Crawford fight if that were to happen?
It's a tough one. It's literally, it's the true upper caliber. It's what we wish we saw Saturday night, and in my opinion, from a spectatorial fight fan. And, we knew 3 world titles were on the line, but it wasn't the real big matchup that, it wasn't the big fight that it really could have been, action based. And I just think that, Spence, who is the truth, he truly knows how to win and what the judges are looking for. That's why he's a tempo-based fighter. He's always going to give them a certain tempo, and if you can't match that or compete against that, you're just simply going to lose, hands down. You're always going to lose, okay? And Crawford, ex-world champion, talented left, right, speed, power, agility, more of a boxer, has that craftiness in him. It's a style that the two haven't faced. They haven't faced each other. They haven't faced that creme of la creme, toe-to-toe, because I already know what we saw Saturday night. Thurman brings more action to the table, even if I'm sitting there taking punches, I give back, and that's what Crawford did to Sean Porter. After, he had his tuck tight. He consumed a lot of punches, and he was looking to give back. And eventually, at a certain round on, he was able to start giving back and bring the fight back around into his favor before the stoppage. So both fighters really know how to win, and they want to win. That's what I love to see in championship matchups. That's what made my fight against Pacquiao so great. Is 2 fighters wanting to win, a man being knocked down, getting up and moving forward. That's what makes a fight great. We all saw what happened to his eye. We all, a lot of people who want to say whatever they want to say, they want to see more brutality. The sport of boxing is evolving. We're a concussion-based sport, and these referees and these doctors, they're trying to do their best to say when enough damage is enough, and they concluded that was enough damage. I don't think that Ugas was in attention. I think he was on his back foot. He looked very hurt. I don't really think he could have survived 6 more minutes in there with somebody like Errol Spence, who just closes well at the end. He loves to put on a show.
Keith, you've targeted a world title shot this year. Do you think that's still a possibility given what Spence said Saturday night, or do you think you might have to wait a little longer?
Look, champions are going to do what champions are going to do. But at the end of the day, I believe that if Crawford waits to the next date with Spence, then the last time he fought a competitive match would have been against Sean in November. They'll be fighting in probably September, 5 months from now, and that's on a minimum note. So at the end of the day, unless they just fast forward something and Spence wants a quick turnaround, if him and his trainer want to do something different and just make history happen now, right here, right now. There's so many options. But if Crawford was to take one more fight before, I think a Thurman fight would be a tremendous fight. And I think that there's more to the competition. We know that the welterweight division is pretty stacked, with tremendous fighters. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I definitely want to get in there with a champion, but the choices that they make are the choices that they make. If I have to stay competitive and stay in the ring and fight somebody in the ranks and not a champion in the months to come, so be it. I'm going to stay busy. I'm going to do my job. But my heart and my desire is always to make some of the best and most exciting fights in the welterweight division. And I can guarantee you Thurman versus Crawford will be way more exciting than what everybody just saw last Saturday night. I just believe that my fight style and what I do and my level of competitiveness just matches all these champions. With or without a belt, Keith Thurman's always going to be a champion at heart, champion in the mindset, and a champion-like performances as well. So at the end of the day, I want to get back in the mix, and I want the opportunity. So I hope I don't get bypassed, but it is what it is. And if so, I'm still going to be right here, always next in line.
You've had some time to reflect on your performance against Mario Barrios last February. Looking back now, give us your thoughts on how you think you did in that fight. I remember Bangetti always had lines that he would repeat. It's just how the old trainers always were, right? They just were broken records nonstop. So he would say, the way that you practice is the way that you perform. And I think that was kind of the way that I practiced, just because of the stagnation. I really wanted to get my body moving. I was incorporating a lot of yoga, stretching, moving. I was boxing a lot of my sparring partners. Some of the guys were bigger and taller than Mario Barrios, had even longer reaches, so I was trying to press them, put stuff on the inside. But I also was boxing on the outside. And then when I got in there with Mario Barrios, I realized, he's not really any more challenging than my sparring partners, especially my sparring partners combined, because I was using a few young amateurs and some young pros, and I was only letting everybody do 4 rounds each, or 3 rounds each. So I had 4 sparring partners, So I'm dealing with 4 men every time that I have to spar, and now I got to deal with 1 man. And when I figured out that I can dominate from the outside, I just rinse and repeated, and was seeing if I can bait him in and get him to commit and make some mistakes. But he was being very conservative, very methodical, and
I sensed that. Maybe some of that was timidness, but maybe I gave him a little bit more respect than I needed to. But when I was committed to a game plan, I just stuck to that game plan, and we made it to the finish line with a pretty dominant performance. And I was having fun in there too, to be honest. I was having some fun, and it felt great to be back performing. So I enjoyed that night.
Yeah, it was certainly dominant. Now, you talked about being in the gym earlier today. When do you expect to be back in the ring?
I expect to be having that phone call soon with Al. Obviously, we're at a point right now where we still have a little bit of time on our side. Like I said, mathematically, the way that I look at the sport of boxing for elite fighters, you're always looking at a 5 to 6 month window on a return. So I think we're still on track to make all that happen. The question is, who are we going to see in the ring this time? So right now I'm just patiently waiting. I hope we can make the best fight possible. I've done it in the past. I want to continue to do it. It's what I love to do. I just love this sport, and I love competing at the highest level. The hardest thing about watching the fight last Saturday is that's not the fight we were supposed to be watching. We're supposed to be watching Thurman versus Spence, 2 undefeated welterweight champions. But when I lost and I fell short in 2019, that opened up a new window. Spence didn't get to fight Pacquiao. That threw Ugas into the picture. So much has evolved. But to me, I can see the way that the pieces move on the chessboard. And, part of me last night just had a reminder of 2019. And, even though my health condition was what it was, the fighter that I am, I was pushing. I was competitive in that fight. I was coming back in the fight. So I always say that I was only X amount of punches towards victory. And so at the end of the day, I'm just trying to take care of my body and prove to the world that Keith one-time Thurman can be champion again.
Now, there are 2 names come to mind in terms of other welterweights, aside from obviously Spence and Crawford. Yordenis Ugas just recently won a regular title, and a lot of folks have discussed the fight between you and Jerome Boots, and some believe you've been dismissive of Boots. But Stanionis and Ennis, are those 2 guys you want to step in the ring with?
Well, the champion wasn't on my radar until his victory last Saturday. And, I'm not sure, if that's one of the routes. I'm as much as I love the belts, I don't like the confusion with the regular champion and the super champ.
Yeah.
Amen.
I kind of like the old school way, but at the end of the day, a title is a title. They're all going down in history. And I definitely want a champion. When it comes to Boots, I'm just trying to get back and get right back to championhood. So even though he's a tremendous fighter coming up, it's not that I'm really overlooking him. I will always look at any contract that's presented to me that's a realistic fight with a realistic date, with a realistic paycheck. That's what it means to be a world-class fighter and a prize fighter, So yeah, man, I mean, I've always been willing to step in the ring. But I would love to get a big fight. Or maybe we just stay moving. We'll see how we get advised to get into this year. But I think Thurman Crawford would. I think the fans are just patient enough that if we made something big happen, the winner of that facing Spence immediately after would just be a tremendous play of events. So I just want to be a part of the real action. So that's all it's about, man. I'm sorry, but your boy Keith one-time Thurman was the undefeated unified champion of the world, before the elbow surgery, before the hand surgery, and I'm just addicted to the game. I know what it feels like to be at the top of that mountain, and I strive to overcome and conquer once again. So all these young fighters, they're just a younger version of myself, climbing to the top, and I love it, and that's why we love boxing. So I look forward to whoever they put in the ring.
If you can't get the fights you want at 47, would you consider a move up to 54, or do you want to stick around and see what you can do at 47?
We'll see. I still think at the age of 33, I just feel like moving up in weight. When you look at the welterweight division, you look at some of the historic counts. When you look at maybe when Robert Duran, or how fighters back in the day used to move up and fight in multiple divisions. I just love the welterweight division. I love its history, and I want to make history here. And I always wanted to make history here. So my spirit doesn't want to move up, but if I have to stay busy and there's a good fight, maybe an opportunity for a title presented, I would have to seriously take that into consideration. But right now, it's not fully on my radar.
Sure.
Keith, to close this out, you've proven to be an insightful boxing commentator. Based on your evaluation of accomplishment and ability, give us your ranking of your top 5 welterweights right now.
Well, I believe from some I've seen on film, when you have Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, Keith Thurman. I mean, just skills and talent, and how these fighters move in the ring and throw their hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen highlights of Boots Ennis, and he's looking great. And then I'm hearing a lot of talk. I haven't seen a lot of film, but I put this name out there because young people have been saying a lot of good things. Is the Virgil kid, right? Is it Virgil Ortiz?
Right? Yeah.
Virgil Ortiz. I'm not too convinced on the young man who just won the world title, the WBA regular champion.
Stanionis.
Stanionis.
Yeah.
He looks like a less puncher Errol Spence. And the only reason why I say that is not just because they're both southpaw, but because how he was pressing behind the jab, okay? The way he was pressing behind the jab. The only thing is he doesn't look like he has the power, the true power, that makes Spence the truth. It's not just the technique. It's that when he can chop down the tree, and he can get rid of tough fighters, world-class fighters like he just did Ugas and like he did Kell Brook in the past. So this young man seems like he's a tempo-based fighter. Seems like he throws a lot of punches in a round. Seems like he's hard to deal with. But I think punchers in the welterweight division could be a problem for him, including people like the other 2 young men that I mentioned, Boots and Virgil.
Good list. Keith, it's always a pleasure to have you and benefit from your insight. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, it's all good, man. I love, this PBC, baby, so this is real boxing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I can talk like that. It's all good, man. We're just looking forward to getting back into this action. That's why I'm telling you, I just really hope I get the call. I would love to fight Crawford. I don't know. They're acting like there's a demand, But I think if you put Thurman in the mix and then the winner of that, I just think it creates more of a demand. You know, that's just me. You know, so you can always rush and do something, or you can actually truly build something up. And with me, no matter what happens, if I win, lose, or draw, it's built back. It's built up. You know, that's without a question how I feel.
Well, you heard it from the man himself, Thurman versus Crawford. We'll can't wait to hear what the fans have to say about that. And Keith, once again, thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's time for Mike and I to go toe-to-toe, and this is a timely one. Of course, Errol Spence Jr. with the monster win last Saturday over Yordenis Ugas. He is now the WBA, WBC, and IBF World Welterweight Champion. So with that in mind, this week's topic is, what are Errol Spence's top 5 wins? As always, we are going to go in ascending order. Number 5, and we'll start with Mike.
Okay. Here it is. Number 5 for me, Mikey Garcia, March 2019. I was concerned at the time about the natural size difference between Spence and Garcia. Garcia had never fought at 47, if I recall. He had fought at 140, but not 147. But you have to remember that Garcia was unbeaten and had just been dominating guys like Adrian Broner, Sergey Lipinets. Robert Easter was the fight before the Spence fight. He's a superb boxer, probably a future Hall of Famer. And Spence, deciding to box with the boxer, just neutralized everything Garcia tried to do and route to a shutout decision. I mean, think about that. He shut out Mikey Garcia. Spence gave a really impressive performance that night.
He absolutely did. I mean, Garcia 35-0, 30 knockouts, a 4-division champion, unified champion at 135, had the IBF title at 140 after he beat Sergey Lipinets and dropped Sergey Lipinets, who went on to do some good things at 147. That was an incredible win. I struggled. It was going to be my number 5, but instead my number 5 is Lamont Peterson. And I think it has more to do with Errol's performance that night. It just blew me away. It was his first title defense after he had beaten Kell Brook. He stopped Peterson in the 7th round, dropped him in the 5th round, but he was just on his game that night and beat Peterson down, outboxed him, outfought him, had the angles, had better counter punches. He was truly on his game, and that version of Errol Spence, I don't know if there's any welterweight in recent times that could come close.
Yeah, I agree. He looked great in that fight. The thing is, though, except for the Porter fight, he's pretty much beat up everybody he's fought, right? So, I mean, we could pick a lot of fights, but that was a special,
magnificent performance. Let's go with number 4. I'll kick this one off, and my number 4 is Danny Garcia. I think that coming off that huge layoff, fighting a dangerous 2-division champion in Garcia. After that, car accident in October 19, he fought Garcia in December 2020. There were so many questions, and he just went out there and dominated. It was a good fight. Garcia was competitive, but Spence controlled most of the action. Threw that great jab, was hardly touched in that fight. Show just great defense, great body punching as always. An impressive title defense.
Yeah, that's why Danny Garcia is my number 4. One of the things that really stood out for me is just the decision to fight Danny Garcia in his first fight after the accident. I mean, just think back about how gruesome that accident was and how fortunate he was to survive it. A lot of guys would have tested the waters against some sort of transitional opponent, not Spence. He wanted to jump right back into the ring with a genuine threat, which is what Garcia was, especially given the circumstances. So I guess some people say that Spence didn't look 100%, but he fairly easily beat one of the top welterweights of the era, after that accident and a 14-month layoff to boot. And I personally, I thought he looked pretty damn good.
Yeah, so did I. He absolutely did look good, and that's why we both got a number 4. Let's go to number 3. I'll kick this one off. My number 3 is his first world title victory, and that was against Kell Brook in May 2017. Spence, of course, knocking out Brook in the 11th, dropped him in the 10th. In front of 27,000 hostile fans over there in Sheffield, England, Brook fighting in his backyard, and Spence fighting for his first world title against an experienced champion. Such poise, so confident, and just, went about the task of breaking Brook down. Great jab, great body punches. He was just on that night. He's always on. But in that particular fight, he truly impressed me because of the poise he showed, because he was fearless in there. I was like, man, this guy's just going to be hard to beat, period. Nothing phases him.
Right. Again, that's why my number 3 is Kell Brook, May 2017. As you mentioned, it's never easy to travel to an elite fighter's home country. In this case, it was his own neighborhood. And he to take the guy's world title, and that's what Spence did when he flew over the Atlantic to face Brook in Sheffield, England. Outboxed him, broke him down, stopped him in 11 rounds to win his first belt, which he still has, which you mentioned. This was a big night for Spence, obviously. I think it was like a breakthrough victory. You sort of alluded to this. I think it became like crystal clear on that night that this guy was a special fighter.
Yeah, it sure was. Let's go to number 2. You want to kick this one off?
Yeah, so this will be interesting to see. I know, I'm guessing we have the same 1 and 2, but I'm not sure about the order. So my number 2 is Shawn Porter, September 2019. I don't know if everyone realizes how good and how prepared Porter was that night. First, at his best, Porter's just a really, really good fighter. And he was and from my perspective, he was as ready as he could have possibly been for that fight, both physically and emotionally. He was really up for that fight. That's why Spence had such a hard time, that and the fact that he decided to beat Porter at his own game, his own toe-to-toe game in the end. And Spence did exactly that. He beat Porter at his own game. He outboxed, he outslugged, he put him down around 11 to sort of seal the deal and won a hard-fought unanimous decision. That was his toughest test, and he still recorded a clear victory, in my opinion. So that was a big night for Spence.
Indeed it was, and that's why it's my number 1. My number 2 is the Yordenis Ugas fight that we just saw Saturday night, coming back from, a 15-month layoff or so, against hot Yordenis Ugas. I mean, a guy who just coming off the Pacquiao victory, or the Porter fight, which a lot of people thought that he won, not to mention the wins over Abel Ramos, Brian Perella, Ray Robinson. I mean, the list goes on. Jamal James. Ugas is certainly an established welterweight, and Errol did what he does, just broke him down, worked behind that jab, dug in, those body shots up close, that beautiful left uppercut that we hadn't seen much of before, that swelled Ugas's right eye shut and put him away in 10 rounds. Just a brilliant performance, in my opinion.
Absolutely. That's why it's my number 1. I think one could argue, I think you could argue that the victory over Porter was a bigger victory, because of who Porter was and how prepared he was for that fight.
Sure.
But I just think that Spence's performance against Ugas was more impressive, particularly when you consider the obstacles he had to overcome. Survived the car crash, the detached retina, the long layoff, and he just beat the out of a damn good opponent for the reasons that you just, with the fantastic resume that you just mentioned. Ugas is a really, really good fighter, and he just got beat down. It was just an absolute, and I didn't even mention the unifying 3 of the 4 titles, which obviously is a big deal. So huge night for Spence, but also a tremendous performance. I think it was the best performance of his career.
Yeah, I don't blame you, and certainly it was a close number 2 for me. You can make a strong case, and you just made a pretty strong case why it would be the best performance of his career, and I have no arguments against any of that whatsoever. I picked the Porter fight just because, as you said, you kind of listed a lot of the reasons in your number 2. Shawn was so on that night. He had the right game plan. He was motivated, tons of energy, and he kind of threw Errol off, and they were in the trenches. And part of the reason why I think it's my number 1 is because that's probably the best welterweight unification bout since Leonard versus Hearns. I mean, and one of the best welterweight fights I've ever seen in my life. I mean,
it was
insane.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It really was. And, I considered that fight for number 1 because I think, if I'm just going to be perfectly honest, I think Porter's at his best is better than Ugas. So from that perspective, not much better, but he's better.
Yeah.
From that perspective, you could argue it should be number 1. But, we're quibbling. I think either one.
Right. Exactly. The performance against Ugas was absolutely brilliant. And that is going to do it for this week's show. We want to thank, of course, one-time Keith Thurman for joining us. And we want to thank you guys for listening. Be sure to check us out next week. More interviews, more boxing talk right here on the PBC Podcast.